John Dougall with Holly Richardson, and you're listening to Red Meat Radio. And Holly is really excited about this next segment.
I am. We get to talk about the CD3 special election. And actually, there's more than just that election on the ballot, but that's the one that has my interest the most. So on the line with us is Mark Thomas. He's the Chief Deputy for Elections for the state of Utah. Hi, Mark.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to ask you a bunch of questions.
Bring it on.
Tell us about the CD3 race and maybe some of the issues that we're seeing and how they're being resolved.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thanks again for having me on. And yeah, for the first time ever, we're having an election. There's still a seat for a congressman who's resigned. And we have tagged it on with the municipal election. And right now we're in the middle of the municipal primary. It's coming up here on August 15th. And 5 of the counties that are within the 3rd Congressional District are all vote by mail. And so those ballots have already been sent out. And 2 of the counties, Carbon and Emory, will be doing the traditional polling locations. And as we worked with the counties and the municipalities to make sure the ballot looks correct and accurate and get those out to the voters, Utah County and Wasatch County have notified us that there was a couple of issues, and I think maybe those are the issues that you were alluding to.
Yes.
In Utah County, for unaffiliated voters, they were accidentally given the Republican race, primary race, and so that will be a lot easier to manage since that's just an extra race that's on the ballot that shouldn't be. And so they've sent out a letter to those voters saying that there's a race on your ballot that you don't qualify to vote for. And so should you vote it, should you turn in your ballot, it will just be ignored. And we're working with Utah County to come up with some processes and procedures so that we can be able to get those counted appropriately. But there is an added complexity to it where we do know that unaffiliated voters under the statute can go to the polls on election day and affiliate with the Republican Party.
Right.
So I know that's raised some questions with people saying, okay, well, as an unaffiliated voter, I have the correct ballot now if I affiliate, so can I just turn that in the mail now and have that counted? And the answer is no. The law requires you to go to the polls and affiliate.
So have we passed the deadline where people can affiliate some other way besides at the polls?
We have, yeah. 30 days before primary election, you cannot switch parties or you can't switch parties at all. As an unaffiliated voter, you can only go to the polls at that point. So that deadline was 30 days before the election.
So what if you were one of these unaffiliated voters and you saw that Republican ballot and you threw it away? What do you do now?
Yeah, so you still have the opportunity to go to the polls, and that was part of that effort by the county to send out that letter notifying that unaffiliated voter that they did receive the incorrect ballot, and so they can go to the polls and be able to vote there. Obviously, with their other ballot in the trash, it doesn't mean anything to anyone, and it won't be counted. But when they do go to the polls, that's the ballot that will be counted.
Now, that's going to be a provisional ballot, right? To make sure that their other ballot didn't come through.
That is correct. Yes, it will be because it may not be in the trash. It may be out transit somewhere, but we will pull in the one that's from the polls, and that's going to be their primary ballot.
So this is the first year that Utah County has done all vote by mail. At least that's where I live, and I'm wondering if there's going to be some confusion. I'm going to assume that there is going to be. That on election day, people are going to go to what they're used to as their traditional polling place and find that there's no polls there. Is every single polling location that has traditionally been open going to be open, or are there going to be a lower number?
No, there will be a lower numbers. Part of that is trying to offset the cost savings or the cost expense of having to send out all the ballots to each of the voters. It is a little interesting. Utah County, when they originally started down this route, they thought it was going to be a nice, quiet municipal election
right.
to experiment with, vote by mail for the first time, because certainly there are, little hiccups here and there as you transition to a new system, and so obviously this has become a much larger system. We've been working with Brian Thompson. This week I know in particular they'll be working really hard with the vendor to ensure that all of their processes, procedures are up to speed. I also recognize, however, that not only with the issue that we have in Utah County as well as some issues that were in Wasatch County, as we work through those with the clerk over the last week and ensuring that voters understand what those issues are and what their options are. There still seems to be some confusion out there, and we're going to work double time this week to really try to clear some of that miscommunication and clarify that. For whatever reason, it just continues to kind of be a little bit unclear for some people. So we're working on that. It is a little complex when you add in some of the unaffiliated processes and procedures, but we'll get it straightened out and work with the counties to ensure that everyone knows what their options are.
Well, and part of the other confusion, I've had a few Democrats contact me saying I didn't get a Democratic ballot, and they didn't have any Democratic races, so for them the Democratic ballot and the nonpartisan municipal races were the same ballot because there were no Democratic candidates, and they didn't understand that. Other folks may not have a municipal election, and they may not be in CD3.
Sure.
So they might not get a ballot simply just because there's no races going on for the primary in their area. Right, Mark?
Yes, you're exactly right. Those are some of the questions that we are receiving as well, and trying to work through those. And one person calls another person and says, I didn't get my ballot. Well, they shouldn't have gotten the ballot because they didn't have an election. But then that starts a whole chain of communication and misinformation. And so we're working on that and this week and help clarify that. It is confusing when you add in this partisan election for just the Republican Party, and then you have some cities that are doing elections, primary elections, and so I understand voters. We need to cut through all of that for them and present it in a clear, concise way that they can understand.
So, Mark, you alluded to some issues in Wasatch County. Can you educate our listeners on that?
Yeah, so in a couple of precincts, they sent out, again, the Republican ballot to unaffiliated voters. It was not across the county in a couple of precincts. And then we also understand that there was some ballots that went out late for those that are not in the Republican Party. They had an issue, it sounds like, with getting that information to their printers, and so there was a delay, or at least a few days, for some of those other political parties. So part of the effort to work with the county on that is we've asked them to add some additional polling locations on election day, and to ensure that for those people who maybe are confused and want to just go to the polls and get it sorted out. The clerk has agreed to do that, so we'll be working with them to ensure that they have added some more polling locations and to be able to help out on election day for those voters.
We had a couple of questions from a listener in Wasatch County, and you've answered part of it, but part of it is also, to what extent can the Lieutenant Governor's election office step in where they have serious concerns and actually run a county's election? And to what extent are they just advising and helping them?
Yeah, the statute tells us that we have a general supervisory role over this. The county clerks, they have the direct role in providing the ballots, making and providing and sending the ballots out. The statute also specifically tells us that if we can't do the duties that a county clerk is required under the statute to do. So even to the extent that we wanted to, we couldn't step in and do their statutory duties. But it is a partnership. We continue to work with them. We hear and see things that they don't, and we try to pass on that information. As I mentioned earlier, we are still concerned with some of this misinformation and the communication that's coming out. It just doesn't seem to be clarifying some of the issues. So we are going to play a larger role from that side of things this coming week, and hopefully that will help as we head into the August 15th election.
Thanks, Mark. I have two final questions for you. One is, when does the ballot actually have to be postmarked? And the other one is, where can people find out where their polling location is, if they have a physical polling location?
So the ballot needs to be postmarked the day before the election. Okay. Not on election day, but the day before.
So by Monday, August 14th.
August 14th. So it has to be postmarked. So keep in mind, if you are going to a post office and they stop their postmarking at 4 p.m. and you turn it in on 5, then it's going to be postmarked the next day. You want to be sure to then walk that into the county clerk's office or a drop box.
Okay.
And so just keep that in mind. And our website, vote.utah.gov, you can find your polling location. You can look up the candidates. You can also be able to track your ballot. And so if you want to ensure that your ballot was received by the county clerk, it will let you know it was received. If you want to know if it was counted, it will tell you whether it was counted.
Mark,
if there was an issue with the ballot, it will let you know if there was an issue as well.
Mark, thank you so much for the information.
Super helpful.
Yes, thanks for having us on. Appreciate it.
That's vote.utah.gov to find out about that. And the primary's coming up August 15th. Vote by mail must be postmarked August 14th. Coming back from break, we're going